Hello, welcome to Lackluster Reactions. I am a Lackluster Reactor, here today for my final review of Season 2 of Vinland Saga. The Farmland Saga arc, the Slave arc, call it whatever you desire. Regardless of what you wish to call it, we have the beginnings of the meat of the story after the prologue that was Season 1, which told Ashtad's story, while also setting up both Thorfinn and Knut on their paths. So let's start our journey as well. We'll be going by themes today. There being a ton of philosophy coming along with, we can call it just a pinch of character growth. And I have a lot of things to say, so let's get started. First, we cannot have a slavery arc without slavery. So let's look at slavery. The treating of humans as nothing more than mere objects, to be owned and treated however the owner wants. And Vinland Saga shows perfectly how bad slavery can be. How? By showing us a good slave owner. Kettle, a man who treats his workers, slaves or freemen, with full respect. He is quickly distinguished from the bad people who mistreat slaves like his tenants, who hurl abuse at Thorfinn and Einod, even giving them a chance to buy their way out of slavery given enough time and hard labor. What could possibly be wrong with that? But Kettle is a weak man. He acts kind and generous not because he is kind and generous, but because he is weak and he thinks talking people into trusting him, as well as his stolen glory, but we'll get to that part, he thinks that they'll build his reputation and glory without ever having to truly get his hands dirty. Whenever he can, he wants to avoid bringing pain onto others and do what needs to be done because he is scared of having to make that final choice. In the end, he releases slaves so that they will owe him and stick around as farmhands, not for the slave's sake. And those he will not release, like Einod, well, that is where his true face is shown. No matter how much one tries to paint themselves as the good master, to show that something is not inherently cruel, in the end, the point of slavery is control, and putting on smiles just hides what being the master of slaves means. When his peace is challenged, when his ownership of Einod starts coming into question, what does he do? Beats her without hesitation. When he finds she is with child, when he is the one who has continuously slept with her, he does not even consider that child as his, but that someone else must have been sleeping with his property, and he beats her. And when someone offers to buy all his slaves, he refuses, because Einhard is his and his alone. The basis of owning slaves is that you see others as no better than objects. Being a good master does not mean you are a good person. It means you're smart enough not to break your toys. Vinland Saga utterly crushes those who try to brush away how bad slavery was and how, hey, some people might have been happy as slaves, by rawly showing the face of slavery. From Einhard having his teeth checked like a horse to the death of Einod, it is a shit show from start to finish. Also, saying both of their names back to back makes you realize how close both of their names are, and especially when I don't know how to pronunciate them, but that's not why we're here, so moving on. While we're going through the flaws and character arcs of Kettle's family, one thing of course needs to be mentioned: what it means to be a man. A discussion which is argued too much in our world, and for many of the same reasons from this arc. And the conclusions reached are also ones I agree with. It all starts with Kettle, a man who is too weak in both body and will in order to achieve anything on his own. And so he uses the fact that he happens to have the same name as a great warrior to gather false glory around him. However, when push comes to shove, it does nothing but bring his everyday life stress and misery. It brings him responsibility he is unable to make decisions on himself, like with the punishments of the children. And he grows codependent on Einhard. And what happens to Kettle? He finds the one person supporting his fragile ego is trying to leave him, and ends up killing her with his own hands. And their child together, never letting him live that one down. Then, in his pride, he organizes other people who have never held a sword before, and acts a leader, a commander, a warrior, and gets a large portion of them all killed. Is that not what it means to be a man? And look at how it affects his sons. Yes, we have Thorgil, who is the ideal warrior by the standards of the time, and it still comes with a long march of death. One's own destruction, to Valhalla, just because that is what it means to be a man. And in the end, when everything comes to an end, he has left on exile, not willing to lower himself to peace when he is made for war. But the real one we need to talk about is Olmar. Olmar, with a famed warrior as a father and a strong warrior as his brother, he became determined to become a great warrior himself. And just like many people in our world who think having a gun makes them strong, he dreams of going to war, or of killing someone else, to prove he is a man. And what comes about from thinking the only way to become a man is to be a killer? He's used as a pawn in order to justify Knut's war goals. He and his family return to the farm without any good options, and Olmar is one of the first to admit he is not prepared to be part of this fight. Everything which Viking society claims made one a man, Olmar did not have any of that. But then the time came when push came to shove, when there was no chance of victory. He was given the option of what they were to do next: accept exile and live, or continue fighting and inevitably die. So of course there was only one choice a real man would make in this situation, right? But instead, Olmar admitted he was scared, and made the choice to end the fight. Yes, they would lose their farmland. Yes, it was not the manly thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. Because Olmar decided enough was enough. He had killed his man, and he felt sick to his stomach about it. He had been to war and saw people going off half-cocked like he had, falling in droves. Olmar was scared, and he did not want to die. And that is why, more than his father, more than his brother, he is a man. They were chasing ideals or just thinking about their land. They never once considered the people who die for them just to have their little ego trip. Olmar is the one who stood back and was against the bloodshed, against mindlessly charging to one's death, just to fulfill some ideal. He assessed the situation and decided the right thing to do was to walk away. Olmar proved himself better than his father and brother by being an actual man. Not a muscle-bound war-nut, not a greedy liar. Someone who actually had the capacity to care about his own well-being and that of his people. Yes, Thorfinn kind of sold day eventually, but that does not take away from what Olmar learned and was prepared to do. And at the end of the day, his father and brother, one way or another, leave the farm, leaving him to fill the role as the heir, and with the future of it being that much brighter. Another person who spends the season trying to find himself was Knut. After last season, Knut became determined to bring the world work to expand peace, and work to expand influence to bring an end to needless violence and bloodshed. Change the world of Vikings to a more civilized people. However, right away he was faced with harsh reality. First, the moment his father died, he found himself in another war, with another Anglo-Saxon trying to take back England's throne. And he found himself in charge of an army, used to bloodshed, used to raping and pillaging, all against Knut's ideals of how everything should be done. then, during the war in England, when the chance presented himself, he poisoned the rival king. A necessary measure, there was only so much bloodshed which could be avoided by taking the direct route. By poisoning his rival, he crushed his rival while still having his troops ready for the next battle. Simple, right? But that did not give him a reason to kill his brother. His brother, from what we saw, was a good man. He was not hostile to Canute, and would have happily allowed Canute to keep his own holdings while keeping Denmark for himself. The only reason he did so was because there might be a conflict. There might come a time when the brothers came to blows, and the only way to avoid bloodshed is to dispose of the potential problem altogether. Neat, efficient, and ruthless. But how did Canute get this far? Why, he wore the crown, and realized how powerless he was. We see him talk to Thorfinn, tell him clearly how powerless he actually is. He cannot command the waves to function as he likes, and likewise he can only do so much to rule men's hearts. If he truly wanted to bring together a world at peace, then he needed sacrifices. He needed ruthlessness. He needed more supplies. Which is where the idea of raiding the farms came about. A simple solution to his money problems. Even not all powerful, his forces can still take a simple farm if there is any resistance, it's not going to be much trouble. And the land and crops are a lucrative way to make money, especially if you do not have to pay those workers there. A solid plan which requires just a little bloodshed, and then another farm, and then another farm, all to continuously finance the necessary wars. But then, Thorfinn saved him. He did not cast away the crown, but made a simple promise to Canute. I will find a place for people who cannot live in this society, who did not belong anywhere else, to live. And Canute, who thought the only way forward was bloodshed, decided to spare those he was trying to rob from, simply because it would give Thorfinn more work. The result? He vastly shrunk his army. After that, the leaders of the divisions of the area bowed to him, not because of the overwhelming strength of his army, but because he trusted them enough to decide he did not need it. Afterwards, the vassals showed true loyalty to Canute, not for simple fear, but true loyalty. Canute's story is one which is the ultimate representation of Thorfinn's ideals, which we will be getting to soon. Through power and bloodshed, Canute managed to get people under his control. But what ended the war was to invite less bloodshed and more peaceful methods. Not to crush someone, but to unite with them as allies. There will still be people who will suffer even now, but Canute has reached a point where he will make people suffer less. And that can make the world a difference. And of course, I cannot go through this without speaking specifically on Einhard and her family. Where do I even start? A simple family like any other. A mother, a father, a small child. Nothing wrong, nothing to mention. But then one thing changes. Iron. And suddenly, men march off to war, all for the sake of greed. Their village did not actually need the iron, and I bet the other side was the same. Both went to war over it, because of what it might do to them. And where did that go? A child dead. The parents separately enslaved, not even knowing whether the other was dead or enslaved or whatever. One went mad while the other found herself on a farm, a concubine to some self-righteous farmer who used lies and fake kindness to endear him to those around him, with the only thing holding his fragile ego and self-esteem together being her bosom. Night after night, forced to listen to his self-centered troubles, all because she is his slave. And as far as she knows, this will be everything she lives through for the rest of her life. Then fortune brings her husband back to her, half mad, but only to threaten to take him away again, where she will never see him alive again, leaving her with two choices. Does she stand back and let it happen? Let the last remains of her happiness be taken from her again? Or does she draw her own blade and walk into the storm, knowing the end is likely going to tear her heart in two? And tear it did. At least she was able to be with her husband in his last moments. But there was nothing she could do to stop him from dying. Nothing she could do to stop the knife plunging in his back. How easily the ones she cares about were taken from her a second time. And how much worse have the coward who had insisted to her all this time, who ended up producing a child with her as she had no choice in the matter. He decided the one straw he would not take is her trying to be happy with her husband. And so, as mentioned time and time again, he beats her, and beats her, and beats her, to the point where she cannot be saved, and with that so-called man proclaiming he would never let her go. And even still, on until her second child, the only family she has at that point, is dead in her womb. We all cling to life, working under the obvious assumption that being alive is better than being dead. But take it from someone who is not suicidal. Life sucks. So much unfair happens in the world for no reason. So much wickedness is done by individuals for no reason. The more you try to find the answer why, sometimes you find there is just not one, that life is just unfair. Over a series of episodes, we are given a chance to see a woman who was dealt an unfair hand again and again and again until she is lying beaten in the back of a wagon, her last breath approaching. And the thing is, this can be anyone, because sometimes things just go wrong and keep going wrong until we have no further choice to make, to when we already reach an unfair death. Why do I have to live? What haunting final words are those? What actions do we have to do to ensure no one dies thinking those words? Is there even truly a way, or will people continue to die unfair deaths? Let me tell you, looking at a war as an example, Thorfinn definitely has his work cut out for him. Which, of course, brings us to one of the central themes of Vinland Saga as a whole. Thorfinn trying to find his way through the world through pacifism. Some people who enjoyed the show the first season might have preferred the Thorfinn there, an awesome warrior taking on all enemies which stand before him, knives shimmering. However, that is missing the point of the story. Season 1 was Thorfinn's prologue and Ashlad's story. The show did not truly become Thorfinn's until he put down the knives. Season 2 with Ashlad dead and the revenge not taken. Thorfinn is listless, without any goals for the future, because he spent his whole life pursuing a goal and never thinking about the future. At this point, Thorfinn is not even sure he wants to go on living. As he goes on, he learns that it is not death he seeks, but without revenge, the way forward is still cloudy. I mean, with a newly discovered will to live, how are you going to know how to live when all you have done your entire life is chase a goal now denied you? When all you have done is committed murder and taken lives, all without any previous thought. This is when Thorfinn finds himself in one of the most beautiful scenes of the season. The vision of Valhalla. The vision of hell. Here we witness all those who have died in war, standing over a river of blood, continuously fighting, continuously laughing. What makes the scene truly beautiful is the duality of the scene. For a Viking, this is everything they have fought for, everything they have always wanted. Chosen by Odin, they are gifted for their bravery to fight for all eternity, any death and injury meaningless. What greater glory, what greater reward could there be? But in the Divine Comedy, in Dante's Inferno. The fifth ring of hell is devoted to the wrathful. Within a river of blood, they fight for eternity, and every attempt to escape the boiling river will have the guardians throw them back in. Both images are perfectly captured at the same time with the ongoing events, showing a grotesque image of a fighting for eternity would more likely look like, as a hell. And for added symbolism, while I cannot as really talk on Buddhism underworlds, I know well the tale of the spider's thread. A man who committed atrocities, who only did so much good within his life, shown mercy by the Buddha in the form of a single spider's thread, a gift to climb out of the underworld to the world of joy and mercy. But others tried climbing after him, and the man, selfish, tried kicking down the corpses climbing after him. And this act negated the goodwill, causing the thread to snap and trapping the man forever in his deserved hell. Here, as soon as Thorfinn realizes who the people are, he weeps, because those clinging to his feet are those he personally hurt, but he does not know the name of any single one of them. He cries, because he believes he deserves the hell around him. And he totally does not, by our old friend Ashlad. Ashlad has always been an interesting character. The main character of Season 1 while Thorfinn was building up his tragic backstory. And here, despite all the wrongs he did to Thorfinn, he also echoes the part he got right in life by acting like a second father to Thorfinn once more. Yes, he's a right prick, but when push comes to shove, he was the one who raised Thorfinn most in his life, in a way of a spiteful Viking, as only he knew. And he takes this moment to give Thorfinn a chance. He acknowledges the kid deserves the spider's thread, as thin as it was, and chased him out of hell, leaving behind one last warning from his second father. Never come back. But that is where the hard part begins, because someone who has fought all his life, what is his purpose when he is not fighting? When a man is trying to escape slavery with his life, is the right thing to do stand up and fight, or is it to turn your back just to fulfill some vow you made? And what purpose is that vow if you still hurt others, not by being active, but by being passive? What is the right choice? Why must I live? A question asked by one who, not so long ago, had no point in his life and did not believe he cared whether he lived or died. He learned that there were many out there who had yet to find their own answers to keep living, which in turn gave him his. Across the ocean, there was a place with no slaves and no war. It is hard to beat the trip to hell as the best part of the season, but Thorfinn's wager came a close second. Still just solidifying his path of pacifism, he is given a chance, a fool's bet, in order to talk to Knut. 100 punches to the face. A tall order for even the most skilled of Vikings we have met so far. But if he wants to stop others from getting hurt, he needs to get hurt himself. And he does. 100 punches, face thoroughly broken, and the respect of all the soldiers gained. Then, he is granted an audience of Knut, someone who believes he has already crossed the line of morality, never to come back. And Thorfinn managed to turn him around by speaking of his new dream. Thorfinn cannot save everyone, but he wants to limit the pain. He knows kingdoms will only cause strife, so he wants to protect the ones who are discarded. A king's reach can be cold and heartless, so he wants to build a sanctuary outside of where kingdoms of the world can reach him. He wants to build his ideals into reality, and he has named that place Vinland. Is his idea of pacifism still more ideal than what can actually be achieved? Yes, of course, but in a world obsessed with violence, the need to fight or kill to be considered tough, a show which encourages pacifism, despite we already knowing how this story ends, is beautiful. Honestly, we need more shows like this nowadays. All in all, I love this season. While it pulled back on the action, what we were given instead was just as wonderful. In a world reveling in violence, we have a show to dare to ask how courageous it is for someone to seek peace instead. The millions of people stating, "I have no enemies," will probably not stop the next civil war. But as long as one person becomes the vote to peace, can you even imagine the world of difference that would make? See y'all next time.